So we've been digging deep into that and looking into just some of the crazy things on the dark web. I mean, just recently, assassination marketplaces, and you've got all these levels of people on the dark web offering hitman services, offering torture services, offering, all of these crazy services. And, what's really interesting there is they're pretty much all scam.
Hey, it's Conor Svensson here, founder and CEO at Web3 Labs. This is a conversation I had with Erica Stanford, founder of the Crypto Curry Club and author of the book Crypto Wars: Fake Deaths, Missing Billions and Industry Disruption. Given Erica's book, we spent a good chunk of time discussing scams in crypto, including scammers scamming scammers, how scammers target communities, multi-level marketing in crypto, and why Web3 itself isn't a scam. We also discussed what Erica is currently spending time researching: assassination services on the dark web. It was fantastic to hang out with Erica for this episode. She spent so much time researching the dark underbelly of crypto that she's uniquely qualified to talk about it, and you'll learn a lot from our conversation. Erica, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Hey, good to see you, Connor.
So I'd love to start with just your background in terms of how you first got into Web3. Lots of people know who you are. You've built a very significant community with your work, and you're prolific in terms of what you've put out there. But what was it that first got you interested in crypto and Web3 in the first place?
Well, the crypto thing, I mean, that's sort of going back a few years. I used to, when I was a student, so after A-levels and in the summer holidays during uni, just go to South America every summer for a couple of months, just with a backpack with whatever money I'd saved working or had left from the student loan, and just sort of backpack around Latin America. And after spending a few summers there, and I lived in Buenos Aires for a while and traveled around, you see a few things. I mean, in Argentina, the first lesson was, well, don't go near a bank. Certainly don't put money in a bank. Also, don't go near anyone who looks like a policeman or looks like they work for the government. But certainly don't put money in a bank. And then, what friends there were doing was the minute they got paid in Argentinian pesos, were getting those converted into euros and dollars, and then cashing them out into euro and dollar notes and keeping them safe in their flat. And that was basically standard banking for Argentina, sort of around 2008. And that stayed with me. And another summer, I was traveling alone around Guatemala. It was a tiny little blonde thing going totally off the beaten track all by myself. So I got mugged lots of times in a row, and I'd left with a bunch of credit cards and travelers checks and whatever one used to travel with to pay for things. And I got to the point that I had none left because they'd all been stolen, one mugging after another. So I had no way of paying anything left. So the only way to get money then, and this was before Bitcoin was invented, the only way to get money in all of Guatemala was go to the local Western Union branch. And so I went to the local Western Union branch and called my dad in the UK, who kindly then went to the local Western Union branch in England and sent me money. And that's a lot of work. You've got to get to the branch and send money, and then it arrives 3 days later, which is slower than ideal. And it cost 14% every time you wanted to send money. And I got talking and speaking to local people, and that was pretty much, if you wanted to send money, because most people there didn't have a bank account, didn't have access to a lot of the sort of banking that we did. And that was the only way to get money from A to B. And then you look at the bigger picture, and you've got, an estimated 2.5 billion people around the world don't have access to banking. And these remittance companies charge up to 30%. The average in the world is 7%, but they charge up to 30%. And then you just see how much money just gets lost to these companies that basically extort as much money as they can out of people. For a summer, it was an inconvenience, and it was probably a good lesson learned. But when you start looking into this, you realize how lacking traditional finance is for a lot of the world, and a lot of the problems facing things like payments. So when I heard about crypto, I was like, straight away, this is super cool. It's easy. You can send tiny amounts. You can send money abroad, but you can send money instantly to people who might have just had all their credit cards or whatever stolen, and it arrives instantly, and it doesn't cost 14%, and it just works. So I just started geeking and playing around, and then that was before there was any real community in London. I went to some of the events, and this was sort of probably ICO, sort of a bit of the bubble period. So there was lots of events hosting people promoting dubious investments. I'm trying to word that politely. There are scams and other investments being bandied about, and there were a lot of super sort of technical get-togethers, but nothing really for those just interested in seeing what was happening in the space. So I started the crypto curries, the networking events where we got together people that were running the companies in the crypto space, and that grew. We held over 50 events before lockdown, and it grew and grew, and the community grew and grew. But what was really cool, I think, just by chance of getting in and starting running these sort of invite only get-togethers over food and drink early on in the space. This was around the people that were running the big, or that people that are running the companies that are now the main big companies in the crypto space. At the time, there were guys with startups, where they maybe had a couple of people in the team, they were working remotely. It was just really, guys with a couple of people with an idea. And by getting to know people, then at startup sort of phase, you watch the companies and just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But I think that was really cool. By having the events and by running the events, you just got to know the people that were really shaping sort of the crypto space now, and then you still get to stay in contact with them and see the growth, which is super cool. And you asked about Web3. I think back then in the early days of crypto, I don't remember the term Web3 being mentioned at all. It's one of those newer terms that has sort of grown into the space, and of course, just by being around emerging tech, you get exposed to things like people asking if you want to try out their new headset or whatever that is.
And on that, with respect to your trips to South America, have you had a chance to be back or just reconnect with any of those folk that you knew from those earlier days, just to see how things have changed there? Because I know there's certainly a lot of talk around it, but to get some inside views there from you.
I haven't, and I would really love to. I'd absolutely love to. So no, I haven't seen it for myself. I've heard in Buenos Aires in Argentina, because they've had so much sort of economic turmoil, and they've got really high inflation there, and there's huge distrust of government, of the sort of the system, of the banking system, of the authorities. They're huge distrust. That's sort of the norm there, and they're one of the biggest users apparently of Bitcoin. So you hear sort of through the networks that they've got a lot of stuff going on about using Bitcoin and using digital currencies and advancing their technology in there, and certainly a great fondness for it. So, but no, I haven't been back to visit. One of the sort of the key things I've heard there. I mean, not that I ever went to Venezuela, which is a shame and clearly something to be remedied. But in Venezuela, with all the hyperinflation there, and we went into this a bit in crypto wars, but there's stories of people get paid in wheelbarrows full of banknotes, and that you go into the supermarket and you have to run around really quickly, because if you're not quick enough, the prices will change from when you enter the supermarket to when you get to the checkout. And you hear all these crazy stories and these pictures all over the internet of how big the stack of notes is that's needed to buy a couple eggs or tomatoes or whatever it is that you want to buy. It's really sort of economy gone wrong there in a short period of time. And you hear that they're one of the main users of Bitcoin and digital currency there. And I think that's one of the interesting things, is where you look at cultures and countries that really use crypto and use it heavily. It isn't brats in London thinking, "Oh, this is cool," or "Let's see how this works." It's people whose entire savings have been wiped away by bad government or bad administration after bad administration after bad administration. You've got people where they've had their life savings wiped away, often several times, by sort of government malpractice or hyperinflation or whatever they put it down to. So, they're desperate, and there's no way of storing money safely. And often there's sanctions, so they can't receive money from abroad or send money abroad or send it digitally because they don't have to have access. They don't have access to the banking in much the same way as many of us. So, a lot of people that are looking at digital currency are doing so out of that's the only best option there is. And, people say, oh, Bitcoin goes up and down in price a lot. It does so enormously. I certainly wouldn't want to risk money on that, but it goes up and down a lot less than the Venezuelan peso, as an example. So for people there, it's the safest store of value they've got.
Absolutely, and of course with stable coins as well, it just gives a lot more optionality with all of that.
I mean, yes, I'm probably the most cynical person about stable coins. Not because of the principle, which I think is great, asset that's actually backed one on one by dollar or by whatever it is. I think more just because of when we look at some of the bigger stablecoin projects that have been, they haven't always been as asset backed as they have claimed or they would like to claim that they are. So yes, I think that in stablecoins, I think that the theory is there and the potential is there. I am probably one of the more cynical people to say that there needs to be an awful lot more auditing and checking to see that, you say you've got X number of dollars backing this, do you actually have X number of dollars backing this? I think I'm more of the side that expects a few more massive stablecoin collapses than, or at least before things get good.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those areas which there are some very legitimate operators out there, but yeah, as you say, not all the big operators are willing to provide details of what all their collaterals
Disclose
are.
the state of their
Yeah,
accounts.
I said it becomes, I guess, for people who are not who are newbies to the whole domain, they might see something that looks like it's a stable coin, but then they're not necessarily going to do the due diligence on it to understand who is that's actually put this stable coin together, how have they gone about the collateralization of it. I guess Terra being a great
Yeah,
example, because it's even with the UST name it had, for so many people, they thought it probably was very legitimate.
yeah. No, I mean that's one of the big problems in the crypto space. It isn't as regulated yet, or as sort of audited yet as it needs to be, or as it could be. So you've got a lot of projects making a lot of claims that they don't always live by in their entirety, and people see them at face value and sort of believe them at face value, and then end up being victims to a lot of those claims.
And talking about these things, it's one of, like, victims of these different scams and so on. It's one of these areas that you're really well qualified to talk about, because you published your book Crypto Wars. Actually, I've got a copy of it here as well, because I did enjoy reading it. It
Legend.
was, yeah, last summer, was that one? Yeah, it came out last summer, didn't it? Yeah.
Yes, last July.
Yeah. So that was my summer reading then. But how was it that's you kind of got into the world of scams and so on? Because it's something that I think is really helpful to talk about here as well. While I've got your attention, but yeah, what's kind of the background there, and what sent you down that whole rabbit hole?
I'd love to tell you a super cool story, like I was investigating some Ponzi scheme, but no, that's not how I got into it. I'm not that cool. How I got into it, I was sent a link to what was at the time the number one podcast series in the UK. It was a Missing Crypto Queen podcast series by Jamie Bartlett in the BBC about the hunt for the founder of OneCoin, what is thought to be the biggest Ponzi scheme in crypto. It's now thought that up to $25 billion, it isn't quite known yet, was lost by the scam, and it's still ongoing. And it's this crazy big, massive scam. The authorities are still trying to find the founder of it, and lots of people have been arrested. But fantastic podcast series. But anyhow, I was sent the link to it and listened to it all in one go, and it was incredible. And did what any normal person would do under the circumstances. And one of the guys in the curry club had Jamie's email address and asked if we could have an event with him. So I just sent him a fangirl email, not expecting any reply whatsoever, but basically being like, Jamie, I love your show. Would you come speak at one of our events? And he said he'd heard about them and that he'd love to, and so that was my entry into crypto scams. Me basically being a total fangirl. But what that was really great. He came to one of our events. We had a sort of Chatham House Rules style event with about 60 people there who'd been in the crypto space since really, really early on. Guys that had run some of the earliest companies, and a lot of the people that had been in the crypto space since super early on. And he told us a lot of the stories about his findings and research into this massive big crypto Ponzi scheme that hadn't been shared sort of on public podcasts, and that couldn't be quite shared on BBC public podcasts. Some of the really dirty stuff and the juice and some of the deepest findings of it. And fantastic sort of crazy eye-opening look into how these scams get so big. But from that event, several of the guys who'd been in the crypto space since early on came and sort of took me aside and told me their stories. They were like, oh, I also knew about this different crypto scam early on, and I tried to post on social media that it was a scam, or I tried to go to the authorities that it was a scam, or I tried to be a whistleblower, and I got loads of death threats, or my family got death threats, or we had to move house. Or one guy, he's now on a government list whereby if a whole list of people try and enter the country where he lives, that they give him warning and give him extra protection because they deem his life to be at risk. Then they just told me all of these crazy stories, and you get to see, yes, you've got some scams, and you've got some little ones that are put together by, a few individual guys that are just trying to make a quick buck. But then you've also got some of these scams that are really run by, professional organized crime gangs. And you're talking in some cases government association, government backing mafia associations there. So you've got some real sort of scary guys and gangs behind some of these scams. That's how they get so big, and that's how they make these billions of dollars. But they told me just these crazy stories, and then from that, you've still got them today all over Facebook, all over social media. There's hundreds and thousands of these groups, sort of chat groups and support groups, either run by scams or run by people that have fallen victim to scams who don't know that it's a scam or want to keep it going, or the people that are getting commissions for promoting the scam. So you've got all of these groups that are sort of actively, publicly promoting scams on social media. And in some cases, you've got people scamming each other how to scam cryptocurrency. So they started inviting me into these groups. So since, I think it was years ago, a couple of years before lockdown, I've been basically sort of sitting meekly, quietly in the background in all of these like crazy chat groups where you get people literally scamming each other. So you've got some of these projects where it's a scam project and they've got a scam cryptocurrency. I mean, some of them there isn't actually a scam cryptocurrency, or it's worthless, and the rest of the world knows that this is a scam. You've got these coins, yes, but they're not worth anything. It's a scam. And then you've got people in these chat rooms scamming each other out of what is known to be a scam cryptocurrency. It's just crazy. And then you see some people say, careful guys, this is a scam, don't fall for it, and get eaten alive because people are so still bought into, in some cases wanting to promote it because they've got too much money hedging on it. In some cases really not maybe knowing or not wanting to see yet that they've already been scammed, or some people just wanting to make the money, so not wanting to believe that it's a scam and thinking, oh, if I just do this, I'll get rich quick like it promises. So it's this crazy sort of psychology of how they get so big and how these scams happen. So I found that absolutely fascinating. And so the publisher reached out and asked if I wanted to do the book, but it's to me it's by far the most interesting aspect of crypto by a long way. And then when you start researching that, and then you get talking with the police, with the law enforcement, with the guys that run the crypto tracing companies, where they're actually seeing exactly what's happening, and you see exactly how they work out who's selling what drugs on the dark web, or who's scamming who, or which founder has been siphoning off money out of whatever wallet. So you just see all this crazy stuff that they're now able to work out and trace, and sort of how good the technology is that traces it now has become, but also how dark and a lot of it is, and how sophisticated a lot of the guys are that are running the scams and the dark web marketplaces and so forth.
And certainly that's something that I really found with your book was this kind of the multifaceted nature of who it's helpful for, because you've got people who consider themselves relatively tech savvy who've maybe been in the space like myself, and um, for me it was just like a great sort of primer on some of the hacks and so on that I wasn't aware of, and then just revisiting some of the other sort of high profile ones. But then also for people who are don't who are new to the space or don't really know it, it's incredibly helpful just for them to understand what can be out there as well, what certain people are doing, because as you say, it is rife with scams, but there's it's granted Web3's got a lot of great, and crypto's got a lot of great technological utility, but there's also people as usual leveraging it to bad ends, and just trying to get people aware of exactly how they're doing it is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, no, massively. And it's I find that fascinating because you see, I mean, so many people fall for these scams, and it's not unique to crypto. I think I will, should say that a Facebook marketplace is rife with scams. My parents get scam phone calls, almost on a daily basis. From all sorts, wanting to get them to pay money in some capacity. There's scams sort of all over. I think that's just a fact of life now, and especially since lockdown. So, I think it's a lot of people say, "Oh, crypto's so bad." I don't think it's that crypto is so bad. Statistically, if you look at how much of crypto is lost to crime, it's no more than fiat currency. But in crypto, that's what we're focusing on. What's interesting in crypto is people, at least what I find is interesting in crypto, people buy illegal things on the dark web, or people try and scam people out of Bitcoin or out of crypto, via dating scams or via phishing scams or whatever. And there's so many sort of parties and people using Bitcoin, or trying to scam Bitcoin out of people, thinking, oh, this is totally anonymous. This digital currency is totally anonymous. If we scam so and so, we'll never get caught. And what is interesting, and I think people are now cottoning on, is that Bitcoin is more traceable than fiat currency. And so I think that's probably why Bitcoin gets so much of the attention, because it is so easily traceable and can be traced back a lot more than people think. And people are starting to see that now. Drugs bought 10 years ago where they thought it was anonymous, and it's like, well, that now shows up in all of the blockchain analytics tools. But yeah, what is interesting in the scam, and sort of a diversion, is they're so smart and so sophisticated and look really good. Almost every day, pretty much, I get a message from someone saying, "Oh, I fell for this scam," and it's like, well, you're a really smart person, and you can see exactly why you fell for the scam, because they have websites, and in many cases that look really good, really professional. They have social media accounts that look good, that look professional. They have reviews and testimonials that, until you do a lot of digging, you think, okay, these are real. They say, oh, we're working with so and so, we've got such and such on our team, we've partnered with whatever company, we've got MasterCards or Visa cards to give to our clients, we're regulated by whatever country. They make all of these claims and show logos, and often show people, that they say, oh, we've got such and such on our team as our advisor, these are our clients. And it's barefaced lies. There was one scam, I forgot the name of it, but there was in the UK, and there was a company that had been regulated and registered by the FCA in the UK. So sort of green tick of approval and UK standards, and allegedly that the scam bought the company that had been registered, and then said, well, look, you can see, this domain, yes, it's been registered, and yes, the name of this company has been registered, and there's crazy stories, or in some cases they just lie out of their teeth, and there's no partnership with Mastercard, no partnership with whatever BMW or some of the claims I've seen. They don't have the people on their team. They don't have these partnerships. They don't have these people as customers, but they just make it up. So if you're looking at these websites, or if you're looking at these claims, you think this is good, and then scams typically spend about 10% of all their budgets that they take in from scamming people on marketing, and some of these scams bring in billions of dollars. So you're talking marketing budgets in some cases of hundreds of millions of dollars. So they've got sponsorships of conferences. There's scams have sponsored sports teams, big, famous, global sports teams. They buy speaking slots in the most prestigious events. They buy adverts in global publications and make it look like, hey, we're a legitimate part of this. They buy social media adverts and slots to make it all look really good. They buy the best people in marketing and in sales to do their marketing and sales for them, to make it all look really good. And it's a grey area for the guys in the sales and marketing. And some of them, I'm sure, know that they're promoting a scam, and other ones probably don't and think they're just doing a job doing social media adverts or whatever. So there's massive, massive amounts of money going behind them, and they're coming at people from all angles. They pay for reviews to make it look real and legitimate. So I can see how people fall for them, because a lot of them look really good and professional, and of course they hire the most persuasive salespeople that they can get to get people to fall for you. So they get big, and they're very, very sophisticated in a lot of cases. Not all cases. Some are really just bad.
Yeah, and this was something that really struck me because, to be honest with you, I was not familiar with multi-level marketing as a concept before I read your book.
Mm.
I'm not a marketeer by background, and although I've been exposed to all the different supplement adverts and so on, which often a lot of
Mm.
multi-level marketing people tended to do these sorts of things, but the whole how easy there was kind of an affinity for these sorts of projects as well, and that, as you say, I guess in my mind it seems like that's kind of a grey area, because you have some people going into these schemes who do have their eyes wide open, whereas others who are slightly naive, thinking that it's just a good opportunity for them to profit from it. So these different levels of almost misinformation between the layers of the sort of pyramid there, so
Yeah.
people can easily get sucked in thinking they're doing something very legitimate.
Yeah. I mean, multi-level marketing, that's controversial at best. I think it should be banned in every form. I mean, multi-level marketing, it's legal, and that's where you're using sort of a pyramid shaped commission structure to incentivize people to sell things, but you have to be selling a sort of a real legitimate object. And there's been all sorts of study that, as you say, some of the supplements or vitamins that are sold at great expense in these multi-level marketing schemes are no better than water. And there's a documentary series that's on Amazon or Netflix at the moment. I forgot what it was called. But there was some multi-level marketing company that sold like tights and leggings and ugly women's clothing. All the people that paid great amounts of money to buy it and then sell on, say, well, the minute they got them, it all fell apart. So multi-level marketing at best is morally grey. The statistic is that 98% of people who get involved lose money. You've got a few people who sort of found it, who get in really, really early. The first people that get in make a lot of money, in some cases hundreds of millions. And 98% of people end up losing money, because you have to pay money to get involved and to buy the stuff to sell on, and they're just left with garage fulls of junk that they can't sell, and that they've had to pay for. So multi-level marketing, even when you're selling a real, physical, tangible, legitimate product, is morally dubious. And then take that onto selling a non-existent cryptocurrency. It's not great. Any way you're going to look at it. But yeah, what you say, yes. So you know the founders kind of generally know what they're doing. That they might hide behind innocence, or hide behind thinking, oh, we wanted to make it great and we just got unlucky, or it just went wrong along the way, or it got bigger than we thought it was going to. There might be aspects of truth to that, but it's a massively sort of sliding scale of people, where you've got the guys who are expert sort of multi-level marketers, pyramid scheme promoters, who just go from project to project and scam to scam to scam, getting in early, making huge amounts of commissions, and then leaving before it topples. So, that they can say, with the appearance of total innocence, oh, well, we got in, we didn't know it was a scam, and we left, and it was only exposed to be a scam after we'd left. And, it makes them look innocent. And I think one has to really question that, because if you get in that early and you really see exactly how it works and you're making so much commissions by selling this to people, like I find it hard to imagine that they don't know that they're making more money than other people, to put that diplomatically. But then it is a sliding scale, because you've got other people who get involved and really believe it, and sort of normal people, because like with any Ponzi scheme, if you get in early they pay out. So you've got a lot of early people who get in, and they put a bit of money in and they get their money back and they think this is great, I've made profit, and that they really do think it's genuine. And then they go tell their friends, they go tell their families, and then their friends and families think, if I put money in, this is great, I'll tell more people. So that's where they get so sort of bad and so insidious, because it's normal people sort of bringing in other people that they know, often because they really believe it. And then it's a whole sliding scale, because some of them maybe eventually find out that this is bad or this is a scam, but then they don't want to tell anyone because they feel really bad, because they brought all their friends and family in and they've lost all their money. So they want to keep the facade going as well. So everyone's sort of motivated to keep the facade going, because the minute that collapses, everyone knows, like, well, hey, you brought me into this thing that lost me a load of money, and now no one's going to get our money back. So they're really, really messy like that. And there are definitely a lot of people who have got involved who, I'd say, initially promoted it, probably not knowing it was a scam. But of course, these things is still a little bit grey. They're still getting massive commissions for promoting it, even if they don't know it's a scam. So I think, anything, where there's anything being promoted with big commissions, I think one has to be dubious at best. I think the sad thing with some of the multi-level marketing is you've got a lot of community and a lot of religious groups where people really put a lot of trust in their religious leader, in their priest, and their pastor, and the community leader. And a lot of those leaders got involved in promoting some of the scams, and would even bring the sort of, someone from the scam company in to sell it, or do the sales pitch themselves, and preach it to their communities or preach to their congregations who maybe didn't have the resources to check if it's true, or just had so much faith in their leader that they thought, great, our leader is saying buy this project, and they're saying he's made money, so I'll put my money in it too, and I'll make money. So you've got lots of communities. It happened in the UK, it happened all around the world, where entire communities and congregations invested in these sort of Ponzi schemes, because their community leader or religious leader encouraged them to, or promoted it to them. And all of these people have ended up losing money. And there's all these horrible stories of, religious leader promoted scam to congregation, all of congregation lost money, religious leader turn up next week in new Mercedes. There's a lot of stories along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's very interesting about where we are right now, especially with cryptocurrency and Web3, is that there's a lot of cynics of it who will take those sorts of arguments and actually apply them to, say, you look at, say, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Initially, the people who got in early, they had a certain incentive to encourage others to adopt it because it increased their holdings of the cryptocurrency. Now,
First
yeah,
go up.
of course, like I think what's fascinating about Web3 and crypto is that there's just so many people who really understand the technology and what's trying to achieve, and have got behind that narrative. I mean, from my own personal experience, Ethereum technology was what pulled me in, because of just me seeing as a major sort of leapfrogging innovation. But then I'm sure people criticize Ethereum because they see that as being, well, there's all these people who got in at a certain point in time, those tokens are worth a lot more, and they're still trying to kind of sell that on. But it is
Yeah.
quite challenging, I think, especially with the point of where we are right now with the industry, in that it is still so early, and the prices are incredibly volatile for the vast majority of crypto assets. For certain cynics anyway, to have a view of how they're, it can be viewed as a Ponzi scheme. But again, like my own belief is very sound in the technology and what's trying to be achieved there, but from a
Mm.
critical perspective, or cynical perspective, I should say, that I think there's elements of that there.
Oh, totally. I mean, and that's also been one of the problems. That, one of the scam sort of favorite argument is people call Bitcoin a scam at first, or people call Ethereum a scam at first, and it's true. Early on, lots of people called Bitcoin a scam, and lots of Ethereum people call Bitcoin a scam, and vice versa. So you've got all this sort of scam label throwing around, that it makes it very easy for anyone to say, well, people call the dollar a scam now. People call all sorts of things. So, that argument does get thrown around a lot, and it's one of those things. It's a new industry. It's growing super fast. Has every aspect of the development of Bitcoin or Ethereum or of any of it been perfect? No, good gosh, no. And even people who got in early on. How many people do you know who got into Bitcoin early on who haven't lost money by it being hacked, or by putting it on Mt. Gox or whatever other exchange that got hacked, or whatever happened? So, for there's a lot of sort of bad events and bad stories, from the whole sort of development of crypto. And there's been an awful lot of problems in the industry, and now we're getting to a stage where you can track things, where you've got secure custody, you've got lawyers who understand it, and you can check smart contracts, and actually see that this thing is actually doing what you what it's said to be doing, and isn't siphoning off money to founder, as has been in the case, as auditors that can actually sort of reverse engineer projects to check that they're doing what they say they're doing. There's insurance now for digital assets. It's all changing super fast. But for everyone who did well getting in early, I've probably met several times as many people who had their story of got in early and then got hacked, got in early, lost hard drive that it was put on, got in early, had money stolen, got in early, put it on whatever exchange, and now no longer has that. So um, there's a lot of stories for the whole development of it, which hasn't been seamless, and it still isn't seamless. You're still not looking at projects that can send money instantly with zero energy consumption, and do all of the things that people say one day they will do.
I'd add to that list as well the got in early, but then had to start selling it in order to get by, or keep my business going, and these sorts of things too.
No. Yeah, totally. Or started mining Bitcoin in spare room, but it got too hot, so turned it off. Or there's thousands of them, and they're fascinating. Or got in early, started mining Bitcoin in spare room. Mines burned them, so they now have brain damage because the miners gave off too much heat. There's a lot of stories.
That's it. Lost the hard drive and all that. Um,
Yeah,
bringing it back to
that poor guy in Wales.
yeah, bringing it back to the just some of like the, I guess the groups who are taking part in the scams, and with your research, did you
Mm.
come, and again it's something that there's I don't know sort of how, if you did notice trends in these regards, but were there certain geographies or types that were kind of seen to be types of person who tended to be drawn towards these, or common themes there?
One of the trends, I mean, scammers go after the most vulnerable, and what is really sad. They go after the poor countries. They go after developing countries. So I mean, there's a scam, a Ponzi scheme that at last count it's now the SEC are aware of it, but was operating out of London. It's a couple guys, were operating out of London. I believe have now moved to continental Europe, but you've got pages and pages and pages of people in the Philippines, in Uganda, in poorer developing countries saying, "I've lost my entire life savings because I trusted you." So that is one of the big themes, where they go off to developing countries, and for that reason, it's why a lot of these Ponzi schemes spread so fast and get so big, because they get out of out of hand. So OneCoin, the one we spoke about earlier, which was this massive, massive big Ponzi scheme, that was the one that engineered, sort of married multi-level marketing to cryptocurrency. So, multi-level marketing, you get commissions if you get somebody else to invest. And then if they get somebody else to invest, you also get commissions, and so do they. So you get lots and lots of money, multiple levels down. And then if you're selling magical internet money, that you say, hey, you've got this magical internet money that if you get it, it's going to double in value. And then a few months later, it's going to double in value again, and then you'll get more of it. And it's just all it's all good. It's selling sort of free money that you get paid commissions to sell. So they sort of it's clever when you look at it, and it's a shame they didn't use their genius to a better aim. But it's a really clever sell. But the problem is, and then you go into a lot of these areas, it's religious communities. It's very sort of community centric areas where all it takes is the people that are the local promoters. They know who the local community leaders are. So then they get them on board, and you're talking the religious leaders, the community leaders, and so forth. And they get them on board, and then they get them to promote it to their congregations. And it just spreads like absolute wildfire, because you've got people who are investing based on trust from the person they're buying it off, not based on some scam leader that's based out of London or wherever that's promoting it. They're buying something that their friend or their cousin or their pastor or their local leader has said, this is good, I've invested, you should invest too, because then you'll get more money. So that they just spread so fast based on local people selling them. And what we said earlier, it's super, super grey who knows that they're promoting a scam, and I think you'll have every level bit within that. You'll have some people that know clearly that this is dodgy, but I don't care, I get my commission paid now, and if anybody invests that's their own stupid problem, and if they lose money, that's their stupid problem, I don't care because I get my commission now. Through to people who think this is genuinely really good, this is the best chance I've got of making money. And there's all these really sad stories of people who gave up jobs in nursing, or sold their farms, or sold their livestock, or sold their parents' houses, and awful, horrible stories where people sold everything they had or gave up everything they had because they thought this is a really good, genuine opportunity, and then got their parents to invest, and their families to invest, and their friends and everyone to invest, because they really thought, hey, this is our best chance to get out of poverty or to get whatever it is that we want in life. And that's really, really sad. So it isn't black and white who's guilty, who's innocent in it. You've got sort of every level in between, but that's just how they spread so much, because of course the commissions paid out are so good, and it's such an incentive to promote it. So that would be the common theme. I would say that it might start with a few guys who are totally removed from the reality of the people that it ends up affecting.
And so it's often using the sort of legitimacy that comes with being based, say, in London or in one of these kind of more developed countries, that they then
financial hubs,
that has this cachet to these different communities.
Totally, and using the good university degrees, and using the education, and using the fantastic work experience, and the good office space, and all of that. And the sad thing is that there's been several of these people that run them really do have those degrees, really do have that work experience. They're often really, really smart people that probably would have had alternative choices in life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, not nice to think about people who go down that route. And so, beyond the kind of scams that you covered and so on in your book, like, are there other areas of, I guess, the world of crypto and Web3 that you're digging deeper into at the moment that are kind of aligned with it, or just what's kind of your area of focus now in that respect?
So working on sort of book 2 research writing at the moment, so I've been spending all my time, a little bit of it actually, on the dark web, and kindly a nice figure in law enforcement sort of took me under their wing and has been showing me around police style how they access the dark web, and how they see exactly what goes on, and what happens there, and I've seen some crazy things that I would never have been even able to find of my own accord. So we've been digging deep into that, and looking into just some of the the crazy things on the dark web. I mean, like just recently, assassination marketplaces, and you've got all these levels of people on the dark web, offering hitman services, offering torture services, offering all of these crazy services. And what's really interesting there is they're pretty much all scams. Like there's no evidence of somebody paying somebody to kill somebody on the dark web and that person ending up killed. There's no evidence of that. So, but what happens, and there's a few of these being infiltrated, but the few different scenarios. Either the sort of hitman website where you would send in Bitcoin and say, I want this person to be killed. Here's their address. Here's their details. Here's their daily routine. Here's what they look like. I want them to have X, Y, Z happen to them. Oh, and I'll pay extra to make it look like a suicide, and I'll pay extra to have it be a professional ex-army rifle hitman or whatever. So people send in their Bitcoin and then they send in their list of what they want. And there's a few scenarios, but none of them end up well for the people who pay the Bitcoin to get people killed. So either it's just a scam and the guy behind the website just goes, well, you're a stupid idiot, thank you for your Bitcoin. And nothing happens because you can't exactly post a negative review. You can't post, well, I sent Bitcoin to get Conor killed and he's still alive, look at him. You can't really post that. You're not going to complain to the police that I sent Bitcoin to get Conor killed and he's still here. So either guy behind website takes a Bitcoin and goes quiet and nothing happens, or some of them send the information directly to the authorities, to the local police force, and say, hey, there's somebody, and they want to get this person killed, and they give all the information that they have. And of course, then with the Bitcoin address, often there's information that can be found, like the IP address or where they came from. And there's a lot of things that can be now traced using cryptanalytics. There's been several cases now where the police have managed to save people's lives because they know that there's a hit out on them, and then that person will usually know roughly, well, it's probably my ex, or it's this person or that person. There's only really one person who might want to kill me, so then they can work out either through cryptanalytics or through general deduction who it is. And then the person who paid the Bitcoin ends up getting arrested or found out. Or one of them has now been infiltrated. So you've now got a thing where the person who gets a Bitcoin goes, thank you for your Bitcoin, and then they take the information to the police. And then there's also now a group that's infiltrated one of these massive sort of assassination sort of websites, where they have all of the different offerings. So the guy running the site, gives the information to the police, but also the hackers who've infiltrated the site to do this expose on them also can see exactly all of the different communications that happen, and also then take that information straight to law enforcement and save a few people's lives. So none of it will end well for the people sending in Bitcoin to get people killed, because you will be there are ways to work out who it is. And it's so many people hide behind thinking, oh, Bitcoin's anonymous, or if I'm on the dark web and using Tor, that's anonymous. It isn't. It can still be traced. Even if people use VPNs and hide behind Tor, you don't think that law enforcement, if they're motivated enough, there's ways that they can find out who's doing what. And even if it's just the one time somebody logged in and made a mistake, or the VPN cut out, or whatever it is, or tracking down the Bitcoin, or just working out biological process of elimination who might want somebody killed. So, I find that super, super interesting, and it's sad to see, what people will do if they think they're acting anonymously, except the irony is it's not anonymous. Like, if you want to get somebody killed, if you want to do anything stupid, like, don't use Bitcoin. It's the worst thing that you could possibly do because it's so traceable. So yeah, I've been spending a lot of time looking into that of late, and it sort of has sort of overview of finding, probably looking into scams and looking into the dark web and all of this is even people on Silk Road, sort of the first main dark website where, it was, you could get drugs, you could get fake IDs, or you could get guns or whatever you wanted on there. People were doing all of these transactions, paying in Bitcoin, thinking, oh, if I send Bitcoin, it's anonymous. And then, not knowing that a few years later, you'd have all these crypto analytics tools be developed that can trace everything back. And even then, the guys developing Bitcoin were saying, don't use Bitcoin for this. Bitcoin isn't anonymous. And then, you've now got all these tools that can see exactly who was what transaction and what transaction is connected to what and what transaction then was cashed out into what bank account and what name. So, there's a lot of information is sort of being dug out now years later. And you've still got all these people doing these, and often cases, really stupid things, thinking they're being anonymous using Bitcoin. And I was just recently looking at NFTs, non-fungible tokens, sort of the new buzzword. You've got overpriced digital cartoon things being sold for lots of money. And people are like, well, would these be used for money laundering, or would these be used for terrorist financing? Well, no, they're even more transparent than Bitcoin. You can see exactly a record of who sold what addresses got what was cashed out into what. So a lot of these digital currencies are a lot more exposed than you'd think, and a lot more sort of transparent, it's publicly down the blockchain than people think. And then even people are now saying, well, if you wanted to do these things, you'd be using Monero, you'd be using a different privacy currency. And I'd be of the opinion to think that law enforcement, the US government agencies are putting a lot of money into the crypto analytics companies to crack Monero and to crack these privacy coins. There's a lot of financial incentive for these highly technical companies to work out how to crack these privacy coins. So I would absolutely imagine that even transactions sent in Monero now, in a few years' time, one of the big crypto analytics companies or the US government or whatever will be like, well, hey, we can see exactly what you've done. So that's sort of a bit of a rant about why it's cheaper to use Bitcoin and crypto to try and kill people on the dark web or whatever else.
I have to say though, out of all the different scams that are out there, it's probably the one I'm most in favor of, in terms of at least if it's a scam side and you can catch some people who want to do some bad things as a result of that, then it's not necessarily a bad outcome for for the people who are the subjects anyway.
Yeah, no. One can't be overflowing in sympathy for the guys that get arrested in those cases.
It's an interesting point as well that you say around the privacy coins, because with the like the mixer services, for instance, there's certainly, with all of the regulatory uncertainty, there's a lot of risk really associated with engaging in some of these platforms now. And whilst, yes, as you say, these things with crypto can be traced, there's always a real risk that if people try to anonymize things too much, that down the line they'll get in trouble for simply having done that in the first instance.
It's sort of ethically, it's not black and white, because there's plenty of real legitimate valid reasons why people might want to use a mixer or might want to use a privacy coin. It might be privacy concerns, it might be concerns for their safety, it might be that they live in a country where it isn't safe or legal to, I don't know, buy a copy of the Bible or do whatever that they want to do safely just because of the country that they live in. It might be sending donations. People have said that they use mixers to send donations to Ukraine because they're from a Russian background and they felt it isn't safe otherwise to do so. There's been all of these examples that that there's very, very valid reasons to use mixers or privacy coins for things, and it's estimated that only a small percentage of transactions using privacy coins and mixtures are illegal, and the rest it might just be because people want to for various other reasons.
The whole privacy side, it is something that people have a right to online, but at the same time, certainly the law enforcement agencies want to be able to keep tabs on activities of some people. So it's it's just that small proportion of bad actors that spoils it for a much larger number of people, as is always the case.
Yes, and North Korean hackers are getting very good, and I imagine a chunk of it is how to get rid of a few large hacking groups that use some of these tools on bigger scales than others.
Absolutely. So I think it's probably a good time to start wrapping up our conversation. But with like you said, you're working on another book at the moment, which I eagerly await that coming out when it does. At this point in time, is it probably too early to say when that's due to be?
Far too early. Let me worry about getting it written first.
That's it. In the meantime, people can read your first book anyway and get up to speed on the crypto. But if people want to, I guess, get involved in any of the communities as well, you're involved in, because you've built you know, a very strong community in London around the Crypto Curry Club. But if people want to learn more about it, that and anything else, where's a good place for them to go?
Yeah, on LinkedIn, Crypto Curry Club, or contact me there, or the website Crypto Curry Club. We've got a weekly newsletter, the Crypto Courier, that goes out every Tuesday, just summary up the main news and events and sort of stories of things that have happened in crypto and blockchain. So that's totally free to subscribe on the website. And yeah, please buy the book, Crypto Wars.
Cool. Well, Erica, I'm really glad we had a chance to chat, and it's one of I really feel that given like the depth of research you've done into all these scams and goings on, it's a really valuable service to the broader community as well, just to be able to give people this brilliant material to learn about some of the not so good things that are happening in Web3. So I thank you for that.
Hopefully that's maybe if anyone had been thinking of hiring him and in the dark web.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look forward to catching up again soon.
Thanks, Connor. See you soon.
Okay, bye. Hi, it's Conor Svensson here again. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm really excited to share with you that I've written a book, The Blockchain Innovators Handbook, a leader's guide to understanding, adopting and succeeding with this disruptive technology. I've been wanting to share my learnings about blockchain and Web3 for a number of years with a wider audience, and I'm really excited that I can do this now. This book covers everything from the fundamentals of the technology through to opportunity identification and implementation for your business to ensure that you can be one of the big beneficiaries of the wider transition to Web3 that's taking place now. The book is available in physical as well as digital form. For more information, head to web3labs.com/innovators.